Hello, superhumans. I'm Sally, and I got inspired today by another Abke video, and I'm just astounded as I watch him unfold the law of one and make it so simple, how much it mirrors what I do as a QHHT practitioner and quantum healer. And we're going to be talking about the three principles of spiritual balancing. Now, I'm going to leave the link to this video in the description box below, and I encourage you to watch the whole thing. The video's about 43 minutes long. We're not going to touch nearly all of that today, but I do want to share some of it with you today and explain, as a QHHT practitioner, what I have found working with my clients over the past several years, and how many of the principles that he talks about actually mirrors people who have never even heard of the law of one. Now, if you are interested in reading the law of one, you can read it for free on my website, sallyknott.com, right there, sallyknott.com. Oh, there it is. All right. So one of the things that we're talking about in this particular video, and I have some notes here, so bear with me, is that he's talking about every time that we seem to level up in our spirituality, there seems to be a stalling period. And we all go through it. So you begin to question, why are we stalling? Are we having an emotion? Are we just kind of just got busy, got off track? I mean, we have to sort of sit with that and decide, where's it coming from? A lot of times, because life is what life is, you'll get things that will kick you in the pants. Perhaps you'll lose a job. Perhaps you'll have an ending of a friendship or relationship, and that can sort of hurt your feelings and send you off direction. And when that happens, then you're beginning to feel those negative emotions. And what I found in my own practice as a QHHT practitioner, what my clients tell me as we go through the healing process, whether it's through the quantum healing or energy healing that I do, or if it's doing the full-blown hypnosis sessions, that when we dive into it, if we have learned, if you do not go through the experience of the emotion, you will begin to get out of alignment, missing the mark. And so your bodies will respond. And the more you miss the mark, the more your bodies respond. That can feel like depression. It can feel like illness or your immune system getting out of whack. All kinds of stuff goes on. So what we're talking about is, first of all, we have to start asking, why do bad things happen? Well, according to Dolores Cannon, we've already shared this in prior videos, and we're going to get into it here with Aaron, is that there's really no good or bad, even though it feels like that when we are here in this experience. There are a lot of things that have happened to me and in my own life that have been traumatic. And I'm like, why did this happen? I felt like I was completely not in control of it. So why would I choose this? And this is the good thing about the law of one. It helps deliver that understanding of why these things happen, as well as Dolores Cannon's QHHT. Because then, as you understand, because the only way healing can actually take place is in the understanding of what the triggering emotions are. The thing of it is, you don't want to suppress it. You want to feel it. You want to lean into it. Now, the only time that it's not good is if you harm somebody else. So as you are going through the experience of being, say, angry, as Aaron will describe here in a few moments, it is important to allow yourself to feel it, mentally go through it. And if you have to, if you're alone, act out, scream, stomp, punch walls, pillows, whatever. But you get it, you have to get it out. That it is energy. It is a frequency. And if you want to ascend, if you want to keep leveling up, if you want to go People want to do this 5D thing, and we're going to get into that in a later video, so kind of watch for that in future videos. But you have to understand, you have to be able to process the emotions, because the emotions are frequency. So whether you can do it on your own, which is a great thing, or if you have stuck energy, you may have past life energies, you may have inherited energies, like I said before in my prior video. We can help you move that along a lot faster, or you can just keep watching videos, and through several videos, you'll kind of figure it all out. Or just contact one of us. We can help you out. So pay attention to what he's saying there. He tries to simplify it. There are 3 stages in this balancing. And I think the thing that you need to walk away with, as I watched this video earlier, is knowing that the yin and yang, the positive and the negative polarity, that negativity truly is an illusion. But the reason it exists is in order to learn how to love and be loved, as Dolores Cannon states in her many years doing regressions. That's the takeaway. Why am I here? It all boils down to that. You are here to learn to love and be loved. And this illusion of negativity is there because in order to build the muscle, you have to have something to push against. The first thing you ask yourself, am I in service to others, or am I in service to myself? If you are in service to self, this self-grandizing, this I need to be the top dog, if you are even triggered by emotions, you have not conquered the first step, which is being in the law of one. So let's go through it, and I will point out some of the things that we've learned as QHHT practitioners along the many years. And at the end, we'll give you a couple of tips that will help you out. So stick with us. Let's roll this video because it's pretty impressive. Again, I'm going to go through several minutes of it with you, but you're going to want to watch this whole thing. And I, again, will leave the link in the description box below. And don't forget, if you want to read The Law of One, you can do so for free. And there is a link on my homepage at sallynup.com. Let's get started.
So let's begin by saying this. Every time you rise higher in frequency, you will eventually get to a place where your growth apparently stalls. Who's experienced that? You rise higher for a while, and then the growth appears like it stalls a bit. You're like, what am I bumping up against here? So when we get to that point where our frequency stops rising, we feel like we're at a stalling point. It's as if like there's a chain, tied to us, tied to our feet, holding us down from rising higher. So we got to figure out, what is this chain that's holding me back, that's anchoring me to this frequency and not allowing me to rise higher? And so as we grow higher in frequency, we must grow lighter in energy. We must begin to surrender those lower, heavier energies, right? For example, if a 5th density being were here in the room with me right now, I wouldn't even know it. They could walk right through my physical body without me being physically aware of them at all. Maybe I would be spiritually aware of them and feel the presence of that being, but physically speaking, I wouldn't even know if they walked right in through my body, because their frequency is so much higher and denser with lighter, that it can pass right through my slow, heavy 3rd density vehicle that's vibrating at a much slower rate. Their vibration is so fast, it just passes right through me. You see that? So they're much lighter in energy. They're much higher in energy. They're not slower and lower in energy, right? So that's how frequency works, is that as we rise higher in energy or frequency, we are getting lighter in energy. So we have to release the heavier energies we're holding on to. So how do we do that is the big question. How do we release the slower, heavier energies we're carrying? And here in 4D University, we teach Ra's practice from the Law of One of spiritual balancing.
I just wanted to kind of stop it here for a second. It just sort of reminded me of a lesson that we had with Dolores Cannon many years ago. And I believe the Law of One sort of talks about this in the early stages, but everything's very heavy, very low vibrational frequency. And Dolores regressed somebody, and she said, "What are you doing?" And the person responded, they felt that they were a rock. And that really startled Dolores. It was kind of funny as she talked about it. She chuckled and she goes, "Well, what's it like to be a rock?" And she goes, and the person stated back, "It's slow." So we are moving through these different densities. And for that reason, why is this all going on? It's because God source energy fractalized. It became fractalized. And all these fractals went out to experience all the densities in order to experience itself. And so this is kind of the theory behind all this. And what's so interesting is that even though this stuff was channeled, like I said, back in the 80s, and Aaron does a beautiful job teaching about this. And, truly, you guys, get on his stuff and just go down the rabbit hole with him. It is so interesting. Can change your life, really. But anyway, we do mirror a lot of what he says. But let me get back into it. So here we go.
Spiritual balancing is a component of requalifying, because we need to take the juice out of the negative thought pattern before we can requalify it. We talked about this at the retreat. We talk about this in the curriculum. If something still has a lot of potency for you, if it triggers you, if it's really emotionally charged for you, you're not going to be able to requalify it until you take the charge out of it. And so we teach you how to do that. But the main way we do it is through spiritual balancing. That's how we take the juice out of it, is we balance it. So let's talk about spiritual balancing as Ra teaches it. In the Law of One, Ra gives the example of anger when asked about, "Hey Ra, can you give us a specific example of what this balancing looks like?" And Ra says, if you're triggered to anger, what you should do in that moment is not resist the anger, but actually go into the anger and turn it up mentally. Ramp up that perspective as much as possible until you can mentally visualize yourself acting out insane levels of anger. Punching holes through the window of a car, running down the highway, screaming in rage and fury, looking like an imbecile. That's where anger, if you just let it go without any restriction, that's where it's going to take you, right? You're going to be a lunatic running down the highway, punching in people's windows and getting arrested. So that's just an example, but you turn up the anger to see the foolishness of it, Ra says. And once you consider the foolishness of where that anger wants to take you, or the folly is the word that Ra uses, which folly is like another word for futility. It is not going to actually benefit you, is what we're getting at. Once you see how that anger isn't actually going to benefit you, then it starts to lose its charge, because that perspective has been fully integrated and assimilated. So the first thing we should say about spiritual balancing, if you're taking notes, is that it is a fully contemplative practice. Fully contemplative practice. Meaning this is a mental exercise. That's not to say that you can't or shouldn't act out a perspective physically. I've said this many times on our calls, that if you're all alone and you need to move some anger and just let the anger do its thing, then yeah, you could scream into a pillow, punch a pillow, do something to move the energy. That's fine. All we're saying is you really don't want to move the energy in a way that harms somebody else, right? Because that creates more negative karma, and that's what you don't want. That's why we're doing the spiritual balancing exercise, right? Is so we alleviate the karma we're carrying and not generate more negative karma. So if the Law of One is the law of do no harm, yes, the law of love everyone as yourself, then we don't want to let our mental exercise be acted out upon somebody else and cause harm. So it's like either act it out mentally so that you don't do harm to anyone, give the ego its day, give the ego what it wants. I want to throw a big freaking fit and tantrum right now. No problem, ego, let's do it. And you imagine it, right? Or if you're all alone, no one's around, throw the fit, who cares? But the point is, you want to go into that perspective until you fully assimilate it and go, oh yeah, it doesn't actually do anything at all to throw a big fit. It doesn't actually help me at all. This anger serves no useful purpose or utility for me. It's not wrong. It's not to be resisted. It's not an enemy. There's nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't have a purpose for me. It's not useful. Does that make sense? So that's how you would balance anger, for example, is you give it its day and then you go, oh yeah, it doesn't really help me at all. Other than moving the energy, right? It's helpful to move the energy, but beyond that, there's no useful utility for anger in physical reality. It doesn't accomplish the outcomes of positivity that I'm looking for. But let's go deeper into this. I want to give you the 3 principles upon which the practice of spiritual balancing can be understood. Because again, what we're trying to do today is understand what spiritual balancing is, the crux of it, right? What are we really trying to accomplish? Because if it's just this like esoteric practice, you're like, okay, I'm told to turn it up in my mind, so let me try it. Okay, here I go. You're not really connecting to the practice. You need to understand the goal of the practice. So here's the 3 principles that will help you do that. The first principle is oneness, or the law of one. The first principle of spiritual balancing is based on the law of one itself, which says that everything is one, all is one. And because all is one, all things are yourself. Everything is you. You are all things. That's the first principle upon which why we want to balance. Why we actually want to balance perspectives, because every perspective is an aspect of myself. So if you have any judgment or resistance to anything in creation, you do not perceive yourself yet. Does that make sense? Because it's all you from different perspectives. So if you hate something, judge it, push it out of your heart, resist it, or crave.
All right, I just kind of want to stop it right there for just half a second. And I just want to kind of make a point of this. How many of us have worked with, quote, spiritual gurus who are passing judgment on XYZ, but they're coming across as being the arbitrators of morality, and yet they are saying this group is bad, or if you don't agree with me, you're wrong, or I have to take this stand because it affects national policy. So I really want to stop it there just to kind of bring that into your awareness. One of the things that we have learned over many years working as Qhtt practitioners is that he's exactly right. We are all one. And if we are triggered and we are lashing out, anything that we are lashing out is because we are judging it. And in our lessons, what we learn is that, and it mirrors what he says here, is that anything that is triggering you is because that is the thing within you that needs to be healed. So if somebody says something, let's just go here, that says something negative about your political candidate, and you get triggered by what they're saying, instead of, for one, you can't control anybody else. So why get yourself into your knickers in a wad, right? But if you are triggered by that and you say, well, your political candidate will destroy the policy of this other thing. And what they're saying is, don't allow yourself to be triggered, because if that causes you to be upset, that is something within you that needs to be healed. The good news is in all this, no matter what perspective you come from, if you are trying to walk in or get into an enlightenment, get to the higher realms of spirituality. When you go higher and higher and higher into a place of love and being in that love frequency, you won't be triggered because you know that bad things, evil, dark stuff does not coexist with God and or the love vibration. He's going to talk about this here in a few minutes, but pay attention specifically to this. I think sometimes the background music can kind of lull you to sleep, but just sort of pay attention to that. Raising your frequency. Allow yourself to feel the emotion, but don't get hung up on it. Allow it to burn itself out and then rebalance yourself. Get into the place of doing things that will make you feel better about you. Put on some music that makes you happy. Go someplace that makes you happy. Take a walk. Do something for you because you can only help those that you love when you are in your fullness. That doesn't mean, just being self-absorbed. This means everybody has to recharge their own batteries. And when we get tired, a lot of things rub us wrong. A lot of things irritate us or trigger us. Sometimes my husband walking across the room, sometimes it triggers me when I'm exhausted. And that's okay. It's like, it's not him walking across the room, it's in me. And I realize I've got to rest. The reason I'm being triggered is because I'm exhausted. Sometimes it's, I haven't dealt with an emotional something or other, but just pay attention to this. Let's get on with it. There's just a little bit more here I want to share with you, and then we'll finish up.
Even chase it and lust for it and have attachments to it. You don't realize it's you yet. Pretty clear. You think it's something other than you that's to be taken or to be resisted. So that's why you need to balance it, because your awareness of self is not complete yet. So your perspective of what you are perceiving needs to be balanced with the awareness of oneness. Until you perceive all things as being one with you, such that there is no judgment towards what you perceive, then you still require spiritual balance. So that's the first principle, the law of one. All things are you, and you have to become aware of that, which is why we need to balance. Second perspective is polarity. And this is the bigger perspective that needs to be probably considered a little bit more. The first one's pretty obvious, I think, but second one is polarity. The fact that all that exists is created from the balanced interchange of two opposite polarities means we have to find equal balance of those polarities within ourselves if we're going to be a balanced being, enjoying a balanced universe. Yes? So in order for anything to exist or to be known, it must have an opposite. This is the law of polarity, isn't it? This is why the Creator made the universe out of two opposite polarities. Because in order for anything to be known, it has to have an opposite to serve as the contrast. So, simplest example would be that in order for the state of love to exist, for love to be known and understood and enjoyed and enriched, enlivened within you, it has to be balanced by the existence of its opposite, which would be fear, right? Hatred, separation, resistance. Love needs to have an opposite to be known. And so remember, this only applies to physical reality, not the Creator itself. And this is a huge point. Polarity, the equality of polarities doesn't mean the Creator has both polarities. Ra is very clear about this in the Law of One. The Creator is without polarity. So fear does not exist in God, but it must seem to exist in the physical universe in order for love to be known by the soul. So when we talk about polarities, I've said this before, but because the polarities are opposites, perfect opposites, that means that one polarity must serve to represent everything that the Creator fundamentally is in its true nature and essence. Right? One polarity has to represent what it is. We can't say, let's take what the Creator is, split that in half, This polarity will be half of what the creator is. This polarity will be the other half of what the creator is. That doesn't work because both halves are identical. So there's still no polarity. You can't split the creator in half and then try to have a universe. You have to have one polarity that represents everything the creator is, and then from that create its opposite of everything the creator is not. The exact opposite of the creator's nature. Positive, negative, service to others, service to self, love, unity, or separation, fear. Is and is not. These are the polarities. And so in the physical universe, they balance each other out and give us the ability to know everything, understand everything, experience everything. So from that perspective, positive and negative are equally valid. We're not supposed to cling to the positive and hate and resist the negative. We're supposed to understand the negative, to give it its rightful place and say, hey, the negative was created on purpose by the creator to give us experience. It's valid. It's supposed to be here. It's not a mistake and it's not wrong. But that's not to say.
And I just want to break for just a second to bring that up to you as well. So when we do QHHT, we take people back either in this lifetime or other lifetimes, different chapters of their experience, wherever that might be. In order for their bodies to heal, he says it right here, is to understand what the negative was. Through the understanding of why that applied to you, once the soul recognizes and understands why something took place, the body will heal itself. It's fascinating stuff. But I just want to point that out because, again, it really hits home. We're going to finish up here in just a minute, but stick with it for just a little bit longer because it's very interesting.
That it doesn't represent everything the creator isn't, because it does. The negative polarity is everything that God is not. And so this is why Ra calls the negative polarity the path of that which is not. Yes? So this is also why the negative polarity cannot progress past early sixth density, because the negative polarity is ultimately an illusion. The negative polarity is not actually a polarity, it's just the opposite of what God is. And likewise, the positive isn't really a polarity, it's just what God is. But without the opposites, we can't know either one. So until the negative polarity arises in the universe, the positive doesn't arise either. So they need each other, and that is why they're equally valid. So polarity is just a tool. It's just a device for learning of the soul. But eventually, as Ra teaches, at the point of mid-sixth density, the point of the higher self, all polarity is transcended by the soul. As Ra says, polarity comes to an end. It becomes a thing of the past for the mid-sixth density soul. The mid-sixth density soul, the higher self version of you, looks back at all its past lifetimes and says, oh, look, that was back when I believed polarity existed and operated through polarity. Wow, that's so amazing. Now I exist without polarity. So balance takes us to that point, and we will continue to balance from third density through fourth density, through fifth density, and through the first half of sixth density. So we got a lot of balancing ahead of us, but the balancing becomes very different after third density. Here in third density, we're just balancing the basics. We're doing kindergarten balancing. Stop resisting. Don't judge. Stop hating. Stop fearing. Stop creating these huge imbalances against the universe. See all things as equally valid. See all things as one with yourself. See all perspectives as valid from the relative perspective they come from. So while we are experiencing a polarized physical universe, we must reach perfect balance between each polarity, because perfect balance between polarity represents the state of the creator who has no polarity. So again, polarity is a tool for learning. That's it. And so to come to balance with positive and negative is to understand and accept positive and negative. The third principle is the principle of balance. So we have the law of one, polarity, and balance. The third principle upon which spiritual balancing rests is balance itself, meaning because all is one and all is created from two polarities, then all things must exist in a state of equal balanced interchange. Yes, perfect balanced interchange. What is not perfectly balanced is called a blockage in Ra's language. A blockage is really just an imbalance of energy. And so the law of one says that the universe is a system of perfect balance. And so we, being a microcosm of the macrocosm, must come to perfect balance within ourselves as well. And Ra is very clear about this in the law of one. To the fully balanced entity, that is the crystallized being, to the fully balanced and crystallized entity, no situation arises that can trigger a negative emotional response. The only response ever felt to any situation is love and the desire to serve. So that's a pretty high bar, yes? But that is.
Yes, it is a high bar, and we'll go ahead and stop it there. It goes on. You can see it's goes to 42 minutes and 53 seconds. Again, the link will be left for you in the description box below, and I would recommend following Aaron Abke. He's got a lot of wisdom, and it'll help you tremendously, and you can do that for free. So there's a lot of good stuff there. But it is a tall order. When a lot of bad things are happening, it is very difficult to stay, quote, in the love vibe, right? And everybody wants to tear you down. Everybody, not everybody, but sometimes it can feel that way. Let's put it that way. And, they can tear at you and misunderstand you and say, you are on the wrong path. And you're like, but I'm on the right path because I'm feeling kind of the love vibe. And if you are feeling the love vibe and feeling abundance and prosperity, if somebody comes to you and says, you're on the wrong path, you need to disconnect that. It's happened to me. I just chalk it up as the person who thinks they're evolved isn't quite as evolved as they think they are. So we just kind of like, all right, they can go do their thing until they're ready. But don't get down on yourself. If you are feeling the vibration of love and happiness and joy, don't let anybody rain on your parade. And if you are struggling, then try to apply some of these tips that Aaron talks about that you can get on YouTube, and you get a lot of this stuff for free. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me at sallyknott.com or send me a text or what have you. I do free consultations. If I can help you out, that'd be great. Or just keep watching all the free stuff. And future videos, we are going to be going down some rabbit holes. And one of the things I want to talk to you guys about in my future videos is the Mandela effect. And if you've not heard about the Mandela effect, that is going to be a fun thing because I actually have something sitting on my desk right now that I will reveal in a future video on Mandela effects, why what we see as QHHT practitioners, or many of us see, I can't speak for all of us, but those I've talked to, what's actually going on here. And it's some fascinating stuff. So stay tuned for that. And remember, if you are beginning to feel triggered, there's a lot of things that you can do. You can look up Julia Schiffman on YouTube and do some EFT tapping and work through those emotions. The last thing you want to do is hold on to emotional energy because that suppresses that frequency. And if you are wanting to elevate yourself, it really comes down to learn how to love and be loved. And if you are thinking a negative emotion, then you need to stop and realize that's what's going on and discharge it and see the absurdity of it. Let it go. Take in some deep breaths and be kind to yourself. That will begin to shift you. If you need help, we're right here. For now, take care, and I will see you And so future, I can't talk. Future woo. Talk to you soon. Bye. But wait. There's more. I am so sorry. I cut you off too soon. I really want to share this last couple of minutes with you guys because you know what? It just sort of nicely sums it up for you. And then you can go watch the whole thing if you want to. But I think it's important enough to highlight. And yeah, it really matches with what I have found in my own practice. So here we go.
And Ra is very clear about this in the Law of One. To the fully balanced entity, that is the crystallized being, to the fully balanced and crystallized entity, no situation arises that can trigger a negative emotional response. The only response ever felt to any situation is love and the desire to serve. So that's a pretty high bar, yes? But that is the bar we're shooting for, so let's shoot for it. It's not an unattainable prize. We just have to begin practicing spiritual balancing. And you'll be surprised how fast you can balance your own mental universe. And just by balancing a few things that used to be, triggers that would just eat your lunch, as if anyone said that thing to you, would always make you upset, or that certain person would always trigger you. And you've worked on balancing enough to where you're like, it's all good. It's all valid. Doesn't affect me. All I want is to be of service and to be kind and loving. You can absolutely arrive at that place through this practice. It just takes some practice. So here it is in the simplest possible definition. Spiritual balancing is the art of holding two opposite perspectives at once, equally. To see two opposite perspectives as equally valid. That's spiritual balancing. And Ra mentions this in a number of passages in the Law of One. There's one session that I don't know the reference to, but Dawn asks Ra, like, what would you do in the situation of encountering this kind of catalyst? And Ra says, we would process the catalyst emotionally and mentally. We would then consider its antithesis, its opposite, and we would balance that perspective, and then we would look to be of service. It's like, look at that. It's perfect. It's just like the perfect, simple blueprint of how to meet any catalyst.
And just what I've been saying all along. It is sometimes the hardest thing to put into practice, easiest thing on paper. But, once you get rid of those negative, trapped emotional energies, it goes pretty good, actually, a lot faster. So anyway, just wanted to share that last little bit. Get on that link, check it all out. If you need some help, reach out to SallyKnott.com. Talk to you soon.